Okay, this is number 3 on test 7. And you have this long string of things you need to do. One of the first things you need to do is figure out what operations are going on here, because I feel like sometimes you're forgetting what operations you're supposed to be doing and you're changing everything to multiplication. All right, so notice right here that that is multiplication. Right here is subtraction. Right here is subtraction. And right here is subtraction. Over here, you've got a plus or minus sign, and that tells you that you're going to have 2 answers. You're going to have an answer that has plus the square root of 9, and you're going to have an answer that has minus the square root of 9. So you're going to have 2 answers for this problem. All right, the first thing you have to do is work inside the square brackets. So you've got square brackets here, and you're going to have to do all the stuff inside there before you do anything else. All right, so first, inside there, you will have to do the parentheses. So you got to do these parentheses where you're doing subtraction and these parentheses where you're doing subtraction. All right, so you've got to be very careful how you organize everything. All right, so starting at the left side, let's rewrite it. Curly bracket, square bracket, and then inside that first pair of parentheses, you need to do -4 minus 1. Which is a total of -5. Then you have a subtraction sign, and you have your other bracket, which is -6 to the 0 power minus 2. 6 to the 0 power is 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So right there, you're going to have -1 minus 2. Then you have another minus 1 over there. Close the square bracket. You've got another -1. That's a subtraction, okay? That's not a multiplication. The only way you could show it to be a multiplication would be to put that -1 in parentheses. So that means subtraction. Close the curly bracket, and then you have plus or minus the square root of 9. We can go ahead and change that square root of 9 to what it is, which is 3. You're looking for the number that multiplies by itself to give you 9, and that is 3. So I'll go ahead and put that there. All right, now we can go ahead and keep working inside the square bracket. You've got -5, that doesn't really need to be in parentheses, minus, so this is a subtraction, and then in that second parentheses there, you've got -1 minus 2, which is -3. So that is -3. Then you've still got that -1 over there, close the square bracket, and you've got a -1 on the outside, curly bracket, plus or minus 3. We're still working inside the square brackets. All right, so we've got -3, curly bracket, square bracket. -5 minus -3 is -5 plus +3. -5 plus 3 is -2, and then -1 makes a total of -3, and we're finally done with that square bracket. Outside the square bracket, we've got that subtracting 1, close the curly bracket, and then plus or minus 3. So now we have to do everything inside the curly brackets. So -3 is still sitting there on the outside waiting to be multiplied, but we're not going to multiply it yet because we still have stuff to do inside the curly bracket. -3 minus 1 is -4. So the total sum of everything inside that curly bracket turns out to be -4. And then you still have this plus or minus 3 over here. So now you can multiply by that -3. -3 times -4 is 12, positive 12. Then you have your plus or minus 3. You're going to have 2 answers. 12 plus 3 is 15. 12 minus 3 is 9. So those are your 2 answers for number 3. All right, let's look at number 4. All right, we've got some radicals. 3 square root of 12 minus square root of 48 plus the square root of 30,000. All right, for the square root of 12, we're going to break that down into its prime factorization. So 3 times the square root of 2 times 2 times 3. That equals 12. All primes. All right, square root of 48. We know that 48 is 16 times 3. And 16 is 2 to the 4th power. So we got 4 of these. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 makes 16. And then multiply that by 3, and that's 48. So that's the prime factorization for 48. And then for this last one, we're not going to do a prime factorization. We're going to write it as 3 times 10,000, because 10,000 has 4 zeros. And any power of 10 that has 4 zeros is a perfect square, because you can always divide those zeros in half to get the square root of that number. So we'll come to that in a second. All right, first of all, we're going to use the rule that tells us that the square root of a product is equal to the product of the square roots. So I can rewrite this as 3 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 3. I can write this as square root of 2 times 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 square root of 3. And then over here, square root of 3 times the square root of 10,000. All right, now remember, the definition of square root tells me that the square root of x times the square root of x is x. All right, so anytime you multiply a square root by itself, you get the number, the radicand. All right, so the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is 2. That's the whole point of square root. It's the number you multiply by itself to get 2. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. So what you have here for this first term is 3 times 2 times the square root of 3. All right, the next term, you've got square root of 2 times square root of 2 again, which is 2. You've got another square root of 2 times square root of 2, which is 2. So subtract, remember here's a subtraction sign, don't lose it. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. You're multiplying that by another square root of 2 times square root of 2, which is also 2. And then you have a square root of 3, which is just by itself. All right, last of all, over here, you've got a square root of 3, which you can't do anything about. That's not coming out of there. And then you've got that multiplied by the square root of 10,000. All right, the square root of 10,000 is 100. 10,000 has 4 zeros. 100 has 2 zeros. 100 times 100 is 10,000. 4 zeros. So square root of 10,000 is a perfect square. The square root of 10,000 is 100, because 100 times 100 is 10,000. So the square root of 10,000 is 100. All right, now you can just go through and multiply all the things that are on the outside of the radical. So 3 times 2 is 6. 6 square root of 3 minus 2 times 2 is 4, so 4 square root of 3 plus 100 times the square root of 3. So 100 square root of 3. These are all square root of 3, and that means you can add them up. If they were not all the same radical, you couldn't add them up. You can multiply them, but you can't add them up. So here we've got a minus, we've got a plus, so we can do it just because they're all square root of 3. So 6 square root of 3 minus 4 square root of 3 is 2 square root of 3. Plus 100 square root of 3 is a total of 102 square root of 3. So that is number 4. All right, number 5. Change back to black. All right, so number 5, you're trying to find the perimeter of this shape, which I'm going to draw very poorly, probably. And it involves a rectangle with a semicircle cut out of it. You're trying to find the perimeter. The radius of the semicircle is 1 kilometer. The length of the rectangle is 3 kilometers. And it's a rectangle, which means opposite sides are equal. So this will also be 3 kilometers. This side here is the diameter of the semicircle. So it's going to be 1 plus 1, or 2 kilometers. All right, so to find the perimeter of this shape, you're going to add up all the sides that are on the outside of the shape. It's how far you would have to walk if you walked all the way around this shape. That's perimeter. All right, so that's going to be 3 kilometers plus 2 kilometers plus another 3 kilometers plus the circumference of this semicircle that you have to walk around. The circumference of a circle is 2 pi r. But this is a semicircle, so it's only half of that, so divide it by 2. So that's pi r. So that semicircle has a perimeter of pi times its radius. The radius of it is 1, so 1 times pi. All right, so adding all this up, you've got 3 plus 2 plus 3, that's 8 kilometers, plus 1 times pi, and pi we would say is 3.14 as an estimate of it, approximation of it. So that's a total of 11.14 kilometers for the perimeter of that shape. All right. Number 6. Number 6, you have this solid shape, which looks something like this. And the height of it is 4. The length of this is a right triangle. The length of this hypotenuse of the right triangle is 5. The base of the triangle is 3. And the length of the long rectangle on the side is 20. The first thing you're supposed to do here is find the the volume of this shape. Volume is equal to area of the base times the height. Now for this shape, this is a triangular prism. The base of it is the triangle. You can't take the base of it to be that bottom rectangle because that's not what the prism looks like. It doesn't look like a rectangle. It looks like a triangle all the way through. No matter how you cut it, no matter how you slice it, it will always have that triangular shape that is exactly the same size as the one on the end. So you have to be careful when you're finding the volume of a prism that you know what the base is. The base of the prism is going to be the shape that if you cut that prism up, it will always have that same exact shape. If you used the rectangle as the base and you cut it up crossways like that, it would not always be the same size rectangle because it's tapering off as it goes up. All right, so the area of a triangle is base times height over 2. So that's the triangle. And then multiply it by the height of it, which is 20. So multiply by 20. You can cancel the 2. So you've got 12 times 10, which is 120 cubic feet. All right, to find the surface area is the sum of all the shapes involved in this solid. So we're looking at all the faces. Now you have 2 triangles, one on each end. So this one and the other one that's back there. All right, so each one of those has an area of 3 times 4 divided by 2, base times height over 2. So there's 2 of them, base times height over 2. Whoops, I meant to put in the values there. So that is 3 times 4 over 2 for the triangle. So we've got 2 of those, we're good to go. All right, now we're going to look at the thing that this shape is sitting on. The base of it, the bottom of it, is a rectangle that is 3 by 20. That's what it's sitting on. So the area of that is 3 times 20. The back of it that we can't see behind is another rectangle. Its height is 4 and its length is 20. So 4 times 20. There's only one more shape to do, and that is the front, this slanted part that goes down. and that is 5 times 20. So that's all 5 shapes. This is made up of 5 shapes, 2 triangles and 3 different rectangles. So here we've got 12 plus 60 plus 80 plus 100, which if you add it up is going to be 252, and that's going to be square feet because this is area.